What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazika, the Fight Guys, and I'm also a Forbes contributor. And I want to talk again about Manny Pacquiao versus Keith Thurman. As I've mentioned to you guys before, my opinion is the biggest fight of 2019. And by it being a big fight means what? It means that there are high stakes. There is a lot on the line. Clearly, we know what can be gained. I already wrote about this on Forbes, but I always like to kind of talk about some of the same subjects here on the YouTube channel. We already know what can be gained by this. It's a huge payday. Both guys are going to get their money regardless because they've already signed on the dotted line. As long as everybody makes weight and shows up to fight, they're going to get the large payday that's coming with this. We know Pacquiao is going to take the biggest amount. He's the A side here, no matter that Thurman has the bigger title. It's still Pacquiao, and he's the A side. As far as winning, the winner likely gets the winner of the Errol Spence Sean Porter fight, which would then ultimately be a unification bout for three-fourths of the welterweight titles, which is obviously huge. But even beyond that, it's another huge payday. So a win guarantees another huge payday, which is more, consequential for Thurman because Pacquiao is Pacquiao. He's going to get a payday no matter who he fights. But for Thurman, that's especially a big gain. But as the title of this video, mentions and discusses and alludes to, what is there, like, who has the most to lose, right? So we got to look at both sides to kind of ask that question. And so I'm going to start with Thurman first. At 30 years old, now I understand what the MyBookie odds say. So if you check MyBookie right now, you'll see that Pacquiao is the favorite, right? He has surged in and become the favorite. And we talked about that on a previous video, how that happened, myself and fellow fight guy and Forbes contributor Peter Kahn. But I understand that. I understand that Pacquiao is the favorite. But if you look at Keith Thurman and the fact that he's 30 years old, 10 years younger than Pacquiao, obviously younger, bigger, some would suggest that he's a harder puncher at this stage of their careers. From the outside looking in, you'd say Thurman needs to win this fight. He's 10 years younger than his opponent. So, I mean, if you take the names out of it, right, and you don't even pay any attention to the fact that this is a icon of the sport, a future Hall of Famer, and you say here is a 30-year-old champion against a 40-year-old secondary champion who literally, welterweight is pretty far from where they started as a professional in terms of their weight class, you'd say that Thurman, who is a more of a natural welterweight, should win this fight. So if he doesn't win this fight, you're looking you're looking at him like, man, yes, it's Pacquiao, and yes, he's an amazing fighter, but you just got beat by a guy 10 years older than you, who is not even in, more than likely, his most natural weight class. So that's one thing that happens if Thurman loses. Another thing is that he's you're gonna see some doubts about who Thurman is at this point in his career. There was a time, and I mentioned this before, when Thurman was mentioned as, if not the best welterweight in the world, he wasn't any lower than number two on most people's list, maybe about 2 years ago, before he went away for a while due to injuries. So now, and yes, he did beat Porter, and yes, he did narrowly beat Danny Garcia. But now here we are. You had a victory over Josecito Lopez that did have a tough round in where you nearly got stopped. But now there's going to be questions. Are you still the same guy? Because you looked like a truly elite guy before you went away, dealing with the injuries, getting married, and just living life. You look like a truly elite guy. But now you're back. You looked vulnerable against Josecito Lopez, and now you lose to Manny Pacquiao. So now there's going to be some serious questions. Is Thurman really, does he still have that hunger? Does he still have that dog in him that he needs to be to beat the elite welterweights in the world, the Terrence Crawfords, the Errol Spences, Sean Porter in a rematch? Guys who really still clearly have that eye of the tiger. Does he still have that? And that's going to be a legitimate question, especially if he loses to Pacquiao. And I talked about this at first, but quite obviously, he loses the big payday that comes along with fighting Errol Spence, or the winner of Errol Spence, Sean Porter. Now, if you ask me, based off of the way Thurman has responded to these questions, it doesn't sound as though he's overly enthused with fighting Errol Spence. Like I was listening to an interview he did with the Boxing Voice, and the Boxing Voice was fielding some questions from some of his viewers, and one person asked, "Would you fight Errol Spence or the winner of the Errol Spence Sean Porter fight before the end of the year?" Which I don't know how feasible that's going to be because we don't even have a date yet for Spence Porter. That could be too late in the year for something like that to happen, even in December. But Thurman was so non-committal, so backpedaling in that answer. Um, and he's always stated to his credit and in his defense that he wasn't going to fight the Errol Spencers or the Terrence Crawfords of the world until 2020 because he felt that he needed that time to get reacclimated. But there is a clear resistance to that fight. There's a I don't know if it's a healthy apprehension. There's a such thing as a healthy apprehension. I don't know if that's what it is. We'll find out at some point, I'm assuming, or maybe. But he loses the payday that comes along with fighting the winner of that fight, which would be a huge payday. And to be totally honest, it's not a payday he can secure unless he beats Pacquiao. So now let's talk about what Manny has to lose. And Manny, depending on how you look at it, there are you could say there are more grave consequences, but it's all situational, and I'll explain. Depending on how Pacquiao loses, this could be the last fight of his career. I mean, if Pacquiao is knocked out in devastating fashion, a la something that happened in the fourth fight with Juan Manuel Marquez, then I would hope that Pacquiao would call it a career. I'm getting increasingly less confident that we'll see something like that. I did pick Thurman, and I'm still going to stick with that prediction. But as time goes on and as we get closer to the fight, I'm less confident that he wins by a definitive knockout as I was. I'm going to stay with my prediction, but if you've ever seen confidence pools where you put a 16 on the one you're most confident in, if I was at maybe a 12 before, I might be at around a 7 or an 8 with that now. I'm just not sure about what I'm seeing from the body language of Thurman moving closer to this fight. But there's no question that if Pacquiao were to lose and if he gets knocked out, there will be pressure from all sides for him to call it a career. He felt it after the Marquez fight. And even old promoter Bob Arum has even said that he doesn't want him to fight anymore because of concerns of that sort of thing happening. So I don't know what happens. I certainly hope that that doesn't happen. I've stated before, and I'm not ashamed to say it, Manny Pacquiao is my favorite fighter in the world right now, one of my favorites of all time. I don't want to see him go out like that. So we're hoping that that's not exactly what happens. Even if he has to lose, we're hoping it doesn't have to end that way. But if it does, that obviously is the ultimate price from a career standpoint, what he could lose. It would also cost him the payday that comes with fighting the winner of Errol Spence, Sean Porter. Now, Pacquiao can get a great payday other places, but there is no question that if Errol Spence beats Sean Porter, as most people believe he will, Errol Spence versus Manny Pacquiao at Cowboy Stadium becomes an even bigger event than Thurman Pacquiao. Next year, you're going to be hard pressed to find any fight that is on that level next year, especially in the United States. It would be amazing. They're going to sell out Cowboy Stadium, and it's going to be the must see boxing event more than likely of the year. The only exception, the only thing that could come close is if Anthony Joshua defeats Andy Ruiz and Wilder beats both Ortiz and Fury, and Joshua and Wilder fight somewhere in the summertime of 2020 or something like that. That's the only other thing that could come close, in my opinion. I don't even think there's a fight on Canelo's radar that could be bigger. Maybe Canelo Errol Spence, but I really don't think so. So that would cost Pacquiao that payday, which is not going to be a Mayweather-esque payday, but it would be a sizable one nonetheless. Now, as far as Mayweather, this is the reason why Pacquiao missing the Spence payday would be somewhat significant is because I believe that Pacquiao signed with Premier Boxing Champions Al Heyman under the auspice that there would be a chance that he could lure Mayweather out of retirement. I don't know that that's anything Mayweather ever seriously considered. I think it's something that they may have allowed Pacquiao to believe in order to get him to sign. But I think that, that's something Mayweather, that's too risky of a fight for Mayweather. He's not going to come out of retirement and have that fight. So, in order for Pacquiao to maximize his earning potential from this relationship with PBC and Al Heyman, he almost needs to get the Thurman fight and get the Spence fight so that he can get the two biggest paydays that PBC fighters have to offer him. And if he does that, then he can break away from that relationship, you know, all the better for it. Now, lastly, if Pacquiao loses by a lopsided decision, right? Doesn't get knocked out or anything like that, but just loses by a clear decision. He's probably going to continue to fight. I mean, Pacquiao is a stubborn guy. Like, he's going to do what he thinks is best. And that's part of what makes him great, but it's also part of, if you're a fan of him, it's part of what may worry you. And he's not the only fighter that's like that. But if he loses and continues to fight, then there's the questions about what does he really have left? Can he still really compete on a championship elite level in the welterweight division? Does he have a chance to beat the Thurmans, the Porters, the Spences, those guys, the Crawfords? Does he really have a chance? And what would it take for him to understand that he doesn't? That is really a dangerous place to be in for Pacquiao, to come out of this fight with him not being sure where he stands from an elite level. So I'm interested in hearing and seeing what you guys have to say in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like the video, share it as well. If you've already subscribed and you haven't clicked the notifications bell, make sure you do that so that you'll know when videos are dropping. But as usual, I appreciate you watching. God bless and peace.